We're going to get to some names that are much discussed, and people might say, why are they down here, not higher? But your number 16 starter is Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease, who currently right now is still a member of the San Diego Padres. That Pivetta trade may grease the wheels for a Dylan Cease trade out of the rotation, but for right now, Cease with the Padres. Interestingly, and you and I talk about starting pitchers together all the time,
Yes.
so it's probably not a huge surprise. But I have Dylan Cease at 17. You have Dylan Cease at 16. So we're right there with each other.
Oh man, it's
Um,
funny. I never know what to do with Dylan Cease
yeah.
because what's so crazy to me is that Dylan Cease is a guy that 3 starts will define his year, pretty much. Either those are the 3 blowups or so, or they're great. And it's like 15 runs versus 300 runs, and that's his entire year. That's the difference of everything. There were changes across the entire season, yes, that certainly were better this time around. I remember actually this time last year saying, Dylan Cease, buddy, you got to figure out your sliders. Sliders against lefties, he raises strike rate massively. That's great.
Mhm.
He also was getting hit really hard by throwing more strikes with the fastball against lefties. So what do? He threw fewer strikes to lefties with the fastball, and he got hit less. There you go. He's always been good against right-handers. That's never really the problem. And
Yeah.
with Dylan Cease, and that's why he's going to be another 200 plus strikeout guy. I had to put him here because of that. I just don't think that we're going to get a sub 3 ERA. We're going to take some sort of dent, likely from
Mhm.
Dylan Cease in some fashion. It could be better. It could be worse. It's just so annoying every time. Every time. Also, the I'm trying to do my own calculations in my head of like the hit per nine is 6.5, but he has 38% of his batters were either walks or strikeouts. So then does that mean that the hit suppression should innately be there because guys aren't hitting the ball and playing in the first place? The
Right.
answer is it should be a higher hit per nine. Okay. It should be a little bit higher. It's also not a great defense in San Diego behind him. So I expect that to come up as well, which means the whip also will go up a tick. I don't know if he's going to have the same gains from last year with that slider. And Dylan Cease, buddy, are you learning another pitch? Because please don't make it the sweeper or the curveball. Those aren't solving the problems. The curveball you've tried many a time. Is it a changeup to lefties? Like, really, though? Are you really going to do that? I just want this cutter that has
Yeah.
more vertical drop than expected instead of horizontal. And actually, when he used it last year, it was up and in, which doesn't actually make sense because if you want to throw a cutter inside, you want to get horizontal bite into the batter more than they expect. And right now, it doesn't. So you actually kind of want to have it as a down and away pitch, as like a called strike pitch. Get some grounders, quick outs that way, and then in the zone they'll swing over it for the fastball, and then also sets up the slider away. I mean, really, that's the biggest thing that Cease is trying to figure out. How do I ensure that when my slider isn't good enough against lefties, that I'm not throwing these fastballs because these fastballs I don't command well against lefties at all. And that to me is why you should always have a cutter. We'll see, but he's really good, and you're gonna have him, and you're gonna hate some days. You're gonna love most of it. So fine, Dylan Cease at 16.
It is one of those, like, I put Dylan Cease in here, and I basically was just, I mentioned the four seam stuff that you said, and that he had never proven himself to be a consistently reliable arm for ratios. I just basically said he has ace upside and is maddeningly inconsistent command, and it's just like
Yeah.
you the numbers will be good at the end of the year, but start to start will be chaotic, and you just don't know if he's going to wind up a top 10 pitcher or
Mhm.
between 20 and 30 because the command falters. And so, you know, I have no problem with him if I wait on pitching and he's like my one of my SP2 or something. But hopefully I have a stable SP1 in that case to withstand some of his inconsistencies.
Right.
Here's what we know right now about Spencer Strider. We know he's pitching in spring training, and that's going to get people super excited. We know that he's not expected on the mound in a game for the Braves still until about May. Some point in May. Could be early May, could be late May. We don't know. We know that he had internal brace surgery. So we know that it is not a typical Tommy John. However, it is his second similar-ish procedure. I know it's still an elbow procedure, a UCL procedure. I know it wasn't a full tear like Tommy John, so we don't know if he's going to have the same kind of like recovery that he would if he had a full Tommy John. We know that command usually comes back last after Tommy John, so we should expect some command regression early on from Spencer Strider, as is the nature of coming back from a UCL surgery. We know that Spencer Strider is essentially a two-pitch pitcher who relies on that kind of command, in particular with the slider, to make sure he's getting both swinging strikes and strikes in the strike zone. So him having less than his usual command might regress his quality of innings overall. We also know that Atlanta sees themselves as a World Series contender, and Spencer Strider is a huge part of contending for that World Series. And in any sort of calculus they're doing in terms of his innings, they are going to want to make sure that he is getting innings in September and October. That, in my mind, means that limiting his innings a little bit in April, May, and June makes a decent amount of sense.
Oh yeah.
That being said, you might still get 140 innings of the best starting pitcher in baseball. We don't really know what he's going to look like coming off that surgery. That's all the risk that's baked into where you draft him.
So, fun stat, by the way. In 2024, which was 9 innings, he threw 40 four-seamers and had just one whiff against right-handers. Is that right? Wild? Just one against. This is a 40 against 40 four-seamers against righties and just one whiff. It's just funny. Spencer Strider, it's a case where I'm so happy that we're talking about volume, that the time he's missing is early.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this a bit of I love having that extra roster spot in April. It is the most valuable time of the year to have that roster spot. And yes, you could say, no, I want it for September where I get that extra starter for the week, or the Monday, Thursday swap in with my hitters, which is generally what you should be doing while you're bench. No, because April is when you get decisions made.
Mm-hmm.
Guys get revealed to be of massive value that are absurd, that you're the guy that got him in April and you run the entire rest of the year, right? And yes, if you are in a no IL league, different scenario. I don't talk that way. I talk about your standard 5x5s, all that kind of stuff in 12 teamers where you get 2 IL spots.
Mm-hmm.
It is so great to put Spencer Strider in there, get that roster spot, and then it's like Ted Lasso. You can then have 2 aces, you know? It's like you get one back later on in that roster spot. It's so good. So I love this. I think coming back from Tommy John, you're absolutely right. You're going to limit him at first. First couple starts are going to be annoying. I'm actually going to recommend everybody in that first IL spot, do not activate him yet.
Right.
And then take advantage of that spot. I would probably, whoever I was going to drop for him, I would just make it a batter the previous day. And then like, if maybe I can get one more start in, or just really plan all my moves around it, something like that. But yeah, it's going to be like 4 innings the first time, 3 innings, 4 innings, 5 innings, and bam, then you're good. And it's going to be amazing. He's going to be amazing with it, guys. All right. It doesn't matter what the third pitch is or not. It's going to be amazing. And to get volume that you know is going to be of quality is amazing. The only real pushback I have is he, totally fine? And is it actually going to be May 1st or so? Right? That's it. We see this every year of like Gavin Williams last week. Oh, it's just going to be delayed for a week or 2. Oh, Brian Wu, just a week or whatever. And it extends and it extends and it extends, and we don't know. And it's possible that it's the case with Strider. To see him out there throwing catch, though, or playing catch, throwing catch. My gosh, that's not one of the things. It's have a catcher, playing catch. You have a catch. And that's how I am. But anyway, doing that, much better indication. I could even see myself pushing Strider even higher up this into where Yamamoto is, if I wanted to. But it really depends on if you feel secure with the back end of the guys that you're going to be able to draft or not, and who's going to be in that free agency out of the gate. That if they're not that great, then okay, fine, you don't go for Strider. But if you're still going to get things that you like, yeah, I probably would favor Strider, actually. But it's 1 month. It's 1 month, guys, that you got to survive. Okay, then yes, everyone on May 1st would rather have Strider than Yamamoto. Right? I feel like that's what we're all going to say. So if that's the case, what is 1 month of Yamamoto worth? And like the gap between that replacement thing, assess who that is. I'm convincing myself right now that I should be raising Spencer Strider.
I Yeah, I am anticipating that I will be raising Spencer Strider. I want to hear a little bit more. I want to first of all, I want to see a little bit more about see a little bit more of what he looks like pitching in spring,
Yeah.
and then I want to hear a little bit more about like the timeline, which right now is still a little nebulous. But I could easily see bumping him up closer to like where I have like Glass now in the like low 20s. I don't know that I'll go higher, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, what the Braves say in terms of innings workloads and things like that. I expected you to be a little lower on Chris Sale, just based on our injury concerns. I have him 15th, so I'm a little bit higher, but I don't think
Oh, okay.
egregiously higher. I think we can all agree that 2024 was peak Chris Sale,
Yeah.
and we should expect regression. But I think expecting regression, I'm just careful when I talk about Chris Sale, that I think expecting regression is not the same as saying what happened was a fluke. Because what
Sure.
happened was very real. And what happened was very real because it showed what Chris Sale is still capable of when everything is firing at its best level. It's just very rare that a pitcher consistently can fire like that at their best level. So we should expect him to not produce like he did last year, but it wasn't because he was out of his mind. It was just because he had everything working. And it's very rare that pitchers have everything working consistently multiple seasons in a row. Then you also add the piece that he ended the year not healthy,
Yeah.
and that brings in extra questions. But I still remain confident that in the innings that Chris Sale is on the mound, we are gonna get really solid production out of him.
Yeah. I'm gonna push back a little that he deserved everything last year.
Not
It was
not
and
everything, but I wouldn't
yeah,
call the season a fluke.
no. It should have been a little bit worse. With a very, very fortunate home run rate. I mean, we're talking like point 0.4 out of like what? Point 0.4? Like really? A point 0.4 homer per nine? Oh my gosh. And I left the base rate as 80% or so. And that's kind of those go in hand. Left on base rate and low home runs. Like, yeah, those guys are gonna be left on base because they didn't get a home run. If you hit
Mhm.
a home run, then those guys aren't left on base. Okay. So there is a little bit of that. And actually, it's funny. I looked into this really. I was like, okay, hold on. Where are those home runs coming from? Right. He pitched a lot less in 2023 and had like the same number of home runs on fastballs. And then also had four more home runs off sliders to lefties or to righties. So I watched them and those were like bad sliders and fastballs. Like these were just down the pipe, like bad counts. They do like a 3-2 count, a super high swing rate count, and you just got it right there. And they're like, yeah, we're good. There's
Mhm.
also the fact of that it was 93, 94 back then. And in 2023 and in 2024, it was a Chris Sale fastball at 94, 95. And that's a big difference. That makes it harder to barrel up. Shocking. More velocity helps. So that certainly explains the home run drop. And I'm going to do the classic, oh, great analysis. Let's just average the two. And just say it's going to be like a one homer per nine or so. I mean, you really honestly should just do that a lot of the time with home run rates. Shouldn't go the length of XFIP, but still,
Right.
I it's for Chris Sale. Fine, you can do that. I I would say the other elements are, is that velocity actually going to stay at 95 now? I think it surprised us to see him go up a tick in velocity last year. And he was clearly healthy and in rhythm and everything. And then the back injury too at the end. And then it's like, are you really though gonna hold this? We've seen you fluctuate a ton when it comes to it. I'm gonna bake in something that says you might not actually have the same skills in this regard. I think it's what you're saying about last year's fluke and everything. That doesn't mean what
Right.
regression is. And then there's of course, yeah, the health is weird. So you throw everything together and you have someone that probably isn't going to be the same 30% strikeout rate, the same home run suppression.
Sure.
And that kind of means like this guy is productive, obviously, going to get you wins and everything. It's the same question with Yamamoto. Is like, how much of an impact do you make? And is the quality actually as good as we want it to be? So, with all of that in mind, I have him right next to Yamamoto. I kept going back and forth, but I trusted the health more of Yamamoto. So I'm like, all right, fine. I'll go Yamamoto. Because ultimately it's just more stuff that you get. You can make an argument with like Spencer Strider being better than Chris
Right.
Sale. Because you get that earlier roster spot and you know kind of the thing of like when Strider should come back. But I favored Sale because at least we know at the moment he's healthy. And it just is like, all right, you're healthy right now and doing something. Like I will value impact in April and May more so than August and September. I know that sounds weird because I talk about head-to-head leagues a lot, but that means that you can plan out the year better than holding on to something that doesn't help earlier on and then gets better later. Like that means you have to get both of them. So I will favor that with Sale. Put him here. I don't know. I hate this. This is a really hard year to rank, guys. Oh my gosh.
It's a hard year to rank because you're just like nitpicking between so many guys, and also which again speaks to the depth of the position and waiting and seeing who falls to you and things like that. Also, it's tough. We might get a little more clarity as we get into spring training a little more and kind of see how people are pitching and their recovery and who's going to be ready and who's not going to be ready. And then you have stories like Brandon Woodruff's not going to be ready, and then Brandon Woodruff shows up at camp and he says, "Hey, I'm ready," and you're like, "Okay." So we're going to get more clarity as things go through.
I want to have him lower. I want to have him higher, lower. PLV loves him. Our PLV projections is like SP number 3 or so. It's really difficult because Blake Snell every single year has a different reason for why he has his success. And it's never good in April in May. Never. And we got to sit there, twiddle our thumbs. Last year, he was delayed because of the late signing and messed him up early, is what he said. And then he took some starts, and bam, all of a sudden, he was absurd. It was a 123 ERA and a .78 whip with a 38% strikeout rate across his last 14 starts. Like, you got to be kidding. He only had 145 strikeouts for the year. I want to let that be known. And the end of season whip wasn't the greatest thing ever. The real question is just, all right, are we going to see that kind of Snell for an entire season? Maybe once, maybe. He has only gone 180 innings twice in his 2 Cy Young seasons. I think there's always going to be something with Snell. I also think he's just a man of rhythm. And as a manager, you're going to have to endure that at some point. You're going to be thinking in June, like, no, I got to wait longer. It's fine. It's fine. He is a potential league killer. We talk about league winners. He's a potential league killer. And I think that's an important distinction to make because unlike other guys who you expect something out of and they're not doing it in June, like you didn't hold Alek Manoah past May. You didn't do that. Like we were like, we can't do this anymore. We're done. You will hold on to Blake Snell because of what he's done over the years. And if he doesn't get back there with the curveball, last year was a curveball inside the zone for strikes a ton. That was madly different. We have the 4-seamer in curveball doing a proper Blake Snell blueprint, which is amazing. Thank you so much for doing that again. The previous season, it was his 4-seamer locations where he wasn't getting enough inside. It was all missing up and arm side. So there's always these extra elements. It was a changeup before that, all of a sudden getting out of timeout and becoming good. I don't know. And I hate not knowing. I hate not feeling like I know what I'm going to get every day. It's just me. And if you just want to draft him, forget about him and everything, you can talk about that with, say, like Framber Valdez too. Those kinds of pitchers. This is my own personal preference. I don't want to do that. I want to tinker with my team. I want to be able to assess week to week and make moves. And I feel like that makes me a better manager. Sometimes I over move, all that kind of stuff. I get it. Yeah, not for me. I really hope he does it though. I mean, it's the Dodgers now. Oh my gosh. Yeah, he's definitely not going to go 180 innings now. Yeah.
And we should point out that he's only thrown over 128 innings in just one of the last 3 years, and he's only done that twice in his whole MLB career. So we understand how good he is, but I just think it's safe to pencil Snell in for 140 innings. Like that's, to me, that's where I'm comfortable saying that's what I'm going to get out of him, because I know he can pitch more, but he's not doing that consistently. So sure, he could throw another 180 innings. It's within the realm of possibility. That's why you're taking him. That's why I'm taking him in the top 15 if I can. But this isn't a guy who's like consistently been dominant. Also, remember, he had a 4.20 ERA and a 1.32 whip in 2021. He had an almost 14% walk rate in 2023.
Yeah.
And I know that everybody was like, you excuse that by saying, well, he didn't care about walking guys because he knew he would just get the next guy and he could just nibble and strike the next guy out. Like it didn't matter. But those things matter for fantasy. If everything doesn't line up perfectly, that's a harmful whip. that's not a lot of innings. So there are some questions here where, like, I like Snell. I have him 13th. I don't think that is like, I think that's a pretty fair ranking for him.
I would imagine
But
that's actually close to consensus there.
I don't think I think that we are looking at, like, we've painted a picture of his consistently elite production, which is not entirely accurate in terms of what we've actually gotten from him in the
Yeah.
past.
No, I completely agree with that. And oh, it's Snell. It's also we talk about guys with few innings. I mean, even like Spencer Strider. Um, I have more confidence in a you just throw him into a healthy start where he's
Mhm.
stretched out that he will perform more than Blake Snell, right? That's kind of how I'm seeing this is I'm recognizing like that on a per start basis of just a one-time gamble. I like other guys because Blake Snell, I don't know which rhythm you're going to be in. At the
Yeah.
same time, I do recognize you find a way every single time it's a good scenario. Um, it's so tough. It really is just so difficult. And I could be too high on this even. I could even by Monday, I could have just switched my thoughts again and put him underneath Strider for that exact reason.
Right.
You know, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to end up on Blake Snell. I can probably tell you that he won't be on my fantasy teams.
I could see that. Yeah. Well, let's talk about his teammate really quickly. I'm gonna read two things that I wrote in my blurb about
Yeah.
Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and I'm curious your reaction and your thoughts. First of all, Yamamoto was tremendous when healthy in 2024, posting a 3 ERA, 111 WHIP, and nearly 29% strikeout rate. As you have mentioned many times, we do have data that supports the idea that players coming over from international leagues are better in their second season after they adjust both to the competition and also to the lifestyle
Mhm.
in this country. And then I also mentioned, I know people expect an innings cap on Yamamoto, but he wasn't injury prone in Japan, and the Dodgers can't limit everybody's innings. So they're going to have to let a few starters just pitch as many innings as they can. I think Yamamoto will be one of those guys. I think expecting 150 innings from Yamamoto for me makes a lot of sense. I'm not talking about 180 or 190. I'm talking about 150 as a baseline for a guy who does not have a long injury track record and a rotation of that is filled with injury track records of guys that are going to need to be managed. I think 150 innings for Yamamoto to me is a top 15 starting pitcher.
See, I don't know. There are a lot of pitchers who we can look at and say, great, you're going to produce for me over 150. I mean, that's at least what the baseline expectation. Sure, you can say whatever injury risk you want for guys. And I'm with you that like Yamamoto should be a regular staple of the six-man rotation. It's going to be six-man with the Dodgers. I mean, they're going to, like they did last year, which didn't work. They're still going to try it of doing everything in their power to ensure that all these pitchers are healthy and ready for the playoffs. And you can't imagine Yamamoto does more than, one every 6 days, right? I would
Sure.
also imagine that they're going to give him some breaks here and there. They do have a fair amount of depth at the moment. You have Gonsolin coming back too, Dustin May getting back, and honestly, like I feel like we're just completely underrating those guys, especially Dustin May. I'm so excited about that one. I find myself circling Dustin May at the end of every single draft I'm in. But with Yamamoto, it's what are we getting? What are we actually getting from Yamamoto after this full season? It's really weird to kind of see him as the same reverence that we had last year.
Sure.
And
He was top 10 for most people last year or around that
sure,
fringe, but
it
with
was
the
kind of like
dreamy
just the
upside.
mystery and wondering and all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff.
I
And I
mean,
feel as skill set
we know we're
goes, well,
getting
my
an
fantasy
elite splitter.
we
We know we're
are
getting an
that
elite
performed
splitter.
worse against left-handers, which is kind of
Weird.
interesting.
We know we're getting a good four seamer that we've struggled a little bit in terms of figuring out the best location for, but a
Right,
good four seamer. And we know we're getting an above average, a solid curveball that's not standout pitch, but is a good
right.
pitch, and he uses it comfortably to both righties and lefties.
What I'm getting
Um,
at is it's not a 30% strikeout rate guy, right?
I mean,
That's how I see it with
but
Yamamoto.
it was last year.
I don't think it will be for a full year. It's strange where it's
Okay.
a splitter that's a splitter is reserved for two strike counts. I mean, think of it like Kodai Senga is kind of what I'm doing. And then you have a curveball and you have a four seamer as well. The curve is not really a whiff happy one. It's more about getting the stuff early that you set up for the splitter. And the four seamer, like it dances around a little of like, am I going down in a way? Am I going upstairs? Can I figure this out? You have a very flat arm angle, should be upstairs. Um, I guess I'm not really believing in the 30% strikeout rate. And I would be happier if I saw another number two pitch instead of the curveball. That would actually be more of a whiff generator, especially on the days that, like, you know what, his splitter can't put guys away today. Like, what are you doing? What's the game plan?
Mhm.
And we've seen that happen for many guys. We've seen that with Senga before. We've seen that with Tanaka. We've seen that with Gosman, for example. Um, I don't know. It's like, how much of an impact does he make more than other guys that were going every 5 days, who likely also have a longer leash inside of starts than Yamamoto? I guess that's kind of what I'm struggling with. I have him over this other tier of other guys that are also like every 6 innings, every 5 days,
Mhm.
and I have him above that because the situation is so good, and I do think that he's productive. But I have him below Tyler Glasnow, for example, because it's with Glasnow, I think is easier of like, yes, I know I'm getting elite quality. I should be.
Right.
And also I get fewer innings, but also I get a replacement where Yamamoto might be a guy that just skips a start here and there. You know, they might still do that. They might limit him a little bit more in starts. You know, it's just more haze than I want with Yamamoto. So I'm like, I'm gonna just put you down here.